Welcome to another parent-teacher video lesson from the earlygiftedmanual.com, a free website for homeschooled children 3 to 7 years old and their parents that promotes and develops giftedness at an early age. I am Gary Blank, the creator of that site, and your host and facilitator for this video and all of the videos in my educational program. As the video lessons are designed to work in conjunction with the program on my website, I ask you to, at some point, click on the URL link in the description box below, and this action will take you to the earlygiftedmanual.com. By doing that, you will be able to put this lesson and all of the video lessons here on my channel in the proper context of the total program that I am presenting to you and your child. Welcome to Lesson 17, Number Writing 0 to 20. And here's what you'll need for this lesson. Handwriting paper, which I'm sure you're quite familiar with by now. Pencils, a pencil for you and your child because you'll be working together initially on this. These are finger tracers, and the numbers 0 through 9. I'll just show you a few of them here. And of course you can make these. They're very simple to make. I've used cardstock 8.5 by 11 and cut the cardstock in half and just used a nice chart marker to make a bold line on there. And of course, your child will be finger tracing these as she learns the letters. And in just a few seconds here, we'll get into how you form all of these numerals, if you want to call them that, from 0 through 9. And you will also need the handwriting guide, which you're probably familiar with. And here are all the numbers down on the bottom line, kind of a model for you and your child to follow. And finally, this page is called the 0 to 20 number writing scrolls, and I'll show you how we're going to use this shortly. And of course, all three of these items, the handwriting paper, handwriting guide, and number writing scrolls, these are all printables that you can access on the Early Gifted Manual. All right, before we get into the heart of the lesson here, I just want to review, well, maybe not review since this is the first time. I would like to show you, the parent, just how these numerals from 0 to 9 are formed. And you can always come back and look at this part of the video when you're working on these numbers individually. All right, let's start with 0. And for all of these, you always start at the top. And for the most part, with any letters or numbers, you're always trying to start at the top. There are very few exceptions to that. So start at the top, and around you go, and meet right back up at the top again. For right-handers, it's easier to write this number going in this direction because then you can see where you need to meet up and your hand isn't in the way. And for left-handers, of course, probably the opposite way. All right. 1, of course, is very simple. You start at the top, make a line straight down. Number 2. Start at the top, make half curve, and then straight across line on the bottom. And of course, that's one continuous stroke. Number 3, this is very simple to describe. It's just 2 humps. Start at the top, 1 hump, another hump. The number or numeral 4, I want you to start here and not here on this one. So You're starting up at this point, straight down, across, pick up the pencil, and draw a line from top to bottom. And of course, you can explain these any way that works to your child, any kind of language. But it is important that while they're tracing the number and writing, that you support them by verbally telling them how the number is formed as they're doing it. Until, of course, they no longer need that support. Here's the number 5. This is a tricky one. We'll get into that a little more at the end of the lesson when I talk about number reversals. But 5, you always start right here, halfway down, make a hump, and we call this putting a hat on it. If your child gets in the habit of starting here, it makes what we call a reversal more likely. And like I said, we'll get into that shortly. Okay. 6, start at the top, big curve, and then a little loop at the end. 7, start right here, across, and diagonal line down to the bottom. The numeral 8, or the number 8, start at the top, and you can tell your child, make an S, and then finish it off with a backward S. And this is a tough one for kids starting to write numbers, and you'll see that as you take on the number 8 with your child. Very difficult, but with practice, they will get it. A lot of them will want to make 2 circles, but this is actually the correct way to make that number. And finally, the numeral 9. Start right here at this point, go around, circular, and now right about here you straighten it out. And without picking up the pencil, you come right back down on that line and go right down to the baseline. A lot of kids will like to make it, they'll start down here and make a loop, and it's really hard to read. And a lot of them will make a line like that, like a backwards P. Well, this is how you really make it. Start here, go around, start straightening out your line, and then straight down to the bottom. And welcome to part 2 of lesson 17, number writing 0 to 20. And I think right now, excuse me, it might be a good time to review the video lessons 4 and 5, and those lessons are on handwriting and the mechanics of handwriting, so you can kind of review the finer points of handwriting, and I won't get into those in this lesson because we've already done that. So once again, a good idea to perhaps look over that before we get started here. All right, let's do the actual lesson. And as you remember, we always start out with a finger tracer, and obviously probably the best number for your child to start out when he or she's learning to write numbers is 1, because it's so simple. And in general, the easiest numbers, and you can start with those and do those early on. You don't have to do these from 0 to 9, what's the word I'm looking for, consecutively. You can mix them up. 1, 4 is and 7 are not too difficult. 0 is not too difficult. And on the other end, you can save the most difficult ones for last, like 8, which will really be a challenge for some kids. 3 and 5, and the others can fall in the middle somewhere. All right, so you can model, once again, you can model the activity of how you work with the tracer. So you show your child, this is the number 1. You start at the top, line straight down to what we call the baseline, to the bottom line. do it for maybe 2 or 3 more times, and then have her do it. And while she's doing it, you want to continue to describe the formation of the letter. Start at the top, line straight down to the bottom. And of course, have her do it a few times. And of course, 1 is obviously a very simple number, but it's, like I said, it's the best place to start. And once you've worked with the finger tracer, of course, you can go right over the handwriting paper here. And if he or she is still having difficulty navigating this 3-line system, once again, you can put a little X on the baseline, and we talked about that in the early handwriting lessons. That'll make it perhaps a little easier for him or her to navigate. So once again, you will model the writing, and you're starting out. You can say, I'm going to write the number 1 now, start at the top line, line straight down to the baseline. And normally, if you remember in the handwriting lesson, you can put a little dot here to show your child where to start. And we'll do that now, although with 1s, obviously, it's not that important. And now you will let her write the number 1 and describe it as she's writing. Start at the top, line straight down to the bottom. And on you go across the page. Once again, you model. Start at the top, line straight down to the bottom. And then she does the writing. She comes in and does the writing. And while she's writing, you say, start at the top, line straight down to the bottom. So just like we did with the letters. And of course, once your child gets better at this and gets a better handle on writing the numbers and doesn't need your help as much, you can pre-make a sheet. And I think you see what I mean just by looking at this, where he or she can practice writing the numbers. And once again, this will be once that they get better, they can do this. But in the beginning, you only want to work on 1 number at a time. If you mix them up, that might be a bit overwhelming for your child. So once again, once they get a little better working with all of the numbers, you can make up a sheet, perhaps something like this, where they can practice on their own. Of course, you can be available to help them out if that's necessary. All right. Another way we're going to work with these numbers, let me take this out here. And if you remember from way back at the beginning of lesson 1, this printable is called the 0 to 20 number writing scroll. And as you can see, well, let me show you one that goes all the way up to 20. And there it is. And this should look familiar to you. If you remember back in lesson 15 when we made this arrangement with the number cards, I mentioned that it was a great way for your child to see the relationship between numbers. So now we're moving on to a part of the exercise here where, and of course I forgot to mention this, your child can take this on once he or she can write the number 0 to 9 fairly well. So once that happens, you can switch to these number writing scrolls. Once again, this one here obviously goes all the way to 20. But to start out with, let's just go from 0 to 9. And as you can see, I've pre-made the sheet with the numbers because early on your child will be merely copying. And she may want to copy right below, but make a little X here and tell him or her that they're going to be copying the numbers in these boxes here. So she may want to do this on her own, or you may hang around if she needs some help. It really depends on, where she's at with her skill level, but obviously she will be looking up at the number and trying to make it look exactly the same down here until she makes it all the way to 9, and that's the end of the exercise. So start with him copying the numbers to 9, and once he's got a handle on that, you can switch over to this one, and he can copy all the numbers up to 20. And of course, this creates a bit more of a challenge, because now there are two numbers together, and of course when he writes those, you want to make sure that that there's not a number here and a number over here with a space in the middle. So make it clear to him or her that those numbers are close together. All right. So I don't think I have to do this down here. You understand. He's copying exactly what he sees up here. So those are what I call the 0 to 20 number writing scrolls. And like I said, you can introduce those once your child can write the numbers 0 to 9 fairly well. And finally, I want to mention one more thing about the number scrolls. Once your child really can write the numbers up to 20, of course, you can just give him or her a blank 0 to 20 number writing scrolls, and that can be just a way for them to practice their number writing. And finally, you can dictate numbers for your child to write. And to do that, you will need a blank sheet of handwriting paper and a pencil. I had to look for that. I misplaced my pencil. And you will be strictly dictating. You will not be taking any writing part in this. This is like this. You can start doing this when your child really knows his numbers and can write his numbers. This is just a way for you to check if, like I just said, if he or she really understands the numbers, what they look like, how to write them, and also the spacing. And we'll get into that in just a minute here, because the spacing of the numbers and then a space between the numbers is very important. So we'll start out. This may not be necessary anymore, but I'm going to put a little X on the baseline here again. And you can dictate, and obviously he or she will be doing all the writing. Perhaps, maybe a good thing to do is for you to model the activity first. You can, for example, dictate the number 5, and then you could take her roll. Make a nice 5 right up there. And then perhaps you're dictating the number 16. And now this is very important. Make sure your child finger spaces, or some kids really don't need to do that. They can just visualize the size of the space, but a lot will need to finger space. So they can finger space. And what was the number I said? I think it was 16. Start here. And here's what I mean when I'm talking about spacing. Space between these numbers, but between these two digits of the two-digit number, they're right next to each other. So let me give you another example. I might dictate to her, let's see, 9. And then I might dictate to her, 13. And of course, keep reminding her to finger space. So I think you can see what I'm getting at here about proper spacing. Spaces between each number, but with with the digits of the two-digit numbers, they have to be right next to each other. So once again, this is a pretty simple exercise. You dictate numbers from 0 to 20, and she writes. And you're looking for, obviously, a lot of things. Good letter formation, that she knows the numbers. When you say the number, she can actually write the number. And the proper spacing, which is also very important. Let's see, what else? Oh, and obviously once she gets to the end of the line here, she's going to come back down here on the second line and work her way across. Here's one more possible issue of which you need to be aware as the parent-teacher, and that is the issue of number or numeral reversals. And as you can see, I've written backwards or reverse the numbers 2, 3, and 5, and these seem to be the ones that are most commonly reversed, although it could be any number that isn't that doesn't have symmetry. So let me show you a way that you can help your child to overcome that. It's just a simple thing that they can think of when they're writing the number. So I'm going to move over to my right hand here, and this is for a right-hander. For a right-hander, she's making a 2. Point out to her that the top of the hump of the 2 is facing her hand. And 3. Top of the humps facing her hand. Finally, 5. Top of the hump facing her hand. Let's say your child is a left-hander. Of course, that will be exactly the opposite. He's making a 2, and the top of the hump is facing away from his hand. A 3. Tops of the humps are facing away from his hand. And finally, a 5. And the top of the hump is facing away from his hand. So that's a strategy you can use with your child in case your child is struggling a little bit with reversing these numbers.